Wouldn't it be better if you put her someplace?
You mean an institution? A madhouse?
You just found the marble in the oatmeal. You're a lucky, lucky, lucky little boy. Do you know why? You get to drink from the fire hose! Okay, you ready? Open wide! I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
Hey, you want to see crazy?
You really are crazy.
I don't get it, Doc. I mean, how can all this be happening? It's like we're in hell or something.
No, it's Hill Valley, although I can't imagine hell being much worse.
Now you want to get nuts? Shut up, you freak! Come on! I say shut up! It's a madhouse! A madhouse!
Hello and welcome to Movie Madhouse, a podcast about films lost to the annals of time. I'm Travis Fishburne.
I'm Alex Brunel. This is definitely an annal film.
Yes. And this week we're going to be covering a gnome named Gnorm, aka Upworld.
A title that the internet assures me this movie is also known as, but I've never actually seen it titled that.
Yeah, when I was searching for the trailer last week while I was editing, I'm like, all I can find is Upworld. I can only find Upworld trailers. I can't find a gnome named Gnorm trailer.
I don't know why. We'll get into the significance of that title, because it does mean something in the context of the movie, but it's a bad title. It doesn't tell you anything. So just top of the show stuff. The one thing I would like to say is we have this new Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, who is really actively working to dismantle key aspects of the United States Postal Service. If you've noticed your mail slowing down recently, this is why. It is a pretty transparent tactic for election tampering come this November. Please sign petitions. This person should not be in charge of the U.S. Postal Service. He's a massive party donor, and he's also owns large stakes in what would be direct competitors to USPS. It's a direct conflict of interest, and nothing is currently being done about it, and it's very disgusting and upsetting. I've been dealing with just using the United States Postal Service with great regularity, sending packages all over the world for the last 20 years, and I can count on two hands the number of times it's been mishandled in thousands of transactions. So this is nowhere close to an inessential service. This is something that every American needs to have access to, and it's being destroyed right now in front of our eyes, and I encourage it.
Now more than ever.
Yeah, and I encourage anyone who any of those words concern, just do some reading and, sign petitions, and most importantly, vote accordingly. But we have entertainment things to discuss also.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to lead it?
Well, yeah. The one we were talking about before is that MacGruber is getting a TV series.
MacGruber! I know in the podcast you just edited that in.
Yeah.
This is MacGruber. For anyone who doesn't remember, it was Will Forte MacGyver parody from SNL many moons ago, and a movie that bombed, but is great.
But has a huge cult following.
Yeah. Really, I love MacGruber. My boss from Reno 911, my DP, he asked me earlier in the year, so like, what show should I go after? Tell me what shows you want to work on. And I'm like, I heard there's going to be a MacGruber show. You should work on the MacGruber show. So I texted him today, telling him to get work on the MacGruber show, and he said, I'll see what I can do. Nice. So that's super exciting. We get at least 8 more half-hour installments of MacGruber, which is just insane.
That's great.
Very excited about that.
Especially after Last Man on Earth got canceled.
What a tragedy. Yeah. What a great show. Oh my gosh.
It consistently made me laugh.
It was so great. It was such a great show. And I can't remember another TV show that was so funny while having such an unlikable main character.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. And I know people who had problems watching the show because they're just like, the guy sucks.
It's like, yeah.
And he does, but that's part of the show.
And I love Will Forte's just commitment to everything he does. When the character got his face half shaved, that's how Will Forte looked.
He lived his life that way for the time that he had to be being half shaved. I think he went to an award show or something in that time. Like I remember seeing him in a tux with half the hair on his head. And then he had to keep shaving his eyebrows for a long time.
Yeah.
Because the character's eyebrows didn't come back for a while. Okay, moving on. There was some rather upsetting news that broke yesterday that Disney has no future plans for physical 4K home media releases. And, you know, you can feel one way or the other about that, about future projects, but that does mean that the entire, whatever exists in the Fox catalog that they own, which is all of it, that hasn't already been released on a nice physical 4K, very well may never be. Warner Archive Collection, which was a really amazing like video on demand, physical video on demand, like DVD-Rs and now Blu-ray Rs, BRD, I don't know. And that was as a way for physical releases of catalog films that they don't have a ton of money to like pour into, but they do the transfer and they put it on a disc and they mail it to you, and it's a great service. Also, I don't know what the status of that's going to be anymore. So that's just, for fans of physical media, that's not great. Yeah.
Literally the only physical media I really like am committed to anymore is just continuing Star Wars.
Right.
And so knowing like, oh, they're never going to release The Mandalorian physically.
Right. The idea that there's not going to be a Mandalorian Blu-ray is like so gutting. I need that bit rate, man. And then in another bit of news that's not really news, but because we were talking about Brian Bonsall in detail last week, another one of Brian Bonsall's movies from 1992 is this little horror movie called Mikey. A seemingly innocent and sweet little boy causes murder and mayhem in his new neighborhood and falls for the teenage girl next door. It recently came out on Blu-ray. Comes out tomorrow, actually, August 11th, from MVD. So it's a nice new Blu-ray presentation, but I think most interestingly, for anyone who's interested in seeing Brian Bonsall nowadays, it does include a new feature-length making-of documentary, The Making of Mikey, with new interviews with star Brian Bonsall. So
that's so crazy.
That could be interesting, man. So yeah, Bonsall. Is there anything else? Do we want to talk about anything else before we roll into the Upworld?
At the top of the show, no, I don't think so.
Cool.
So
a gnome named Gnorm, a Los Angeles police detective, partners up with a talking gnome in order to bring down the head of a crime ring. Yeah, that's the short version.
Yeah.
What did you think of the movie, Travis? You'd never seen it before, right?
No, and I really enjoyed it.
Right.
Sarah did as well. It was just like way more entertaining than I think I was expecting. I don't know why. I didn't have like the bar wasn't like that high for me for it to like. I was like, wow. I think just because it was so not on my radar, in terms of like, wasn't really familiar with the concept of it. In fact, Stan Winston had directed it. It's interesting that Stan Winston, other than this and Pumpkinhead, right?
Yeah.
Like he never directed again.
Correct. Not features anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do not know. I saw this movie, I think, for the first time on the Disney Channel when I was very young. I'm pretty sure it aired on the Disney Channel. The Disney Channel used to air a different kind of content than Disney is known for now. And pretty sure I saw this there. And then it would just pop up on cable. I'd see it all the time. And then in college, I made sure to make a DVD dub of Video Spectrum's VHS. And like I said last week, I've seen this movie this is the third time I've watched it since I've lived in LA in the last 10 years. So like, I like A Gnome Named Gnorm a lot because it's so friggin' weird. It's one of these. It's not like the construction of the movie, the nuts and bolts of the movie isn't really anything new. It's, like an unlikely duo buddy cop movie. One has their mission that they have to do, and that's, the driving thing. But like, it's a gnome. And Stan Winston, I was able to find only very, very little background information about this movie.
I was flabbergasted because I poke around IMDb and I'm always looking for just like little bits of trivia and that section and everything, and there's like nothing on this.
There is nothing. Not even the fact that IMDb that there are actually 2 cuts of the movie. The cut that we watched is missing a little bit of content. If it seemed very quick to you when Gnorm and Casey pull up to a strip joint and then enter and they're immediately in Zadar's office, there's a scene in the strip club that's just cut out. Which isn't like a huge hindrance, but there is a strip club scene that's removed from the version called A Gnome Named Gnorm. The version with the Upworld title card has that scene. And I think that may have been a UK release. The movie was shot in 1988, first released in 1990, apparently pulled very quickly, and re-released in 1992. I'm very unclear as to what method of distribution these releases took. I'm unclear as to when the first home video release was, although it seems like it may have been 1994, which I think is closer to the time that I saw the film on TV. I did notice when I was looking at both versions that the version called Upworld, like the version that we watched, the title card that says A Gnome Named Gnorm is styled very much like we had on our title card on that poster, and it comes over live action footage. In the Upworld version, it's a title card much like all the other title cards that are kind of glowing white text on black. That's where the Upworld title was in that cut. And I did find an excerpt from a book with an interview with Stan Winston conducted just after he had wrapped production on A Gnome Named Gnorm. Yet the only information it included on the movie was a quote from Winston where he described it as a buddy film, except where one of the 2 main characters happens to be a gnome. So that helps us not at all. I did learn that there's I think we're easily the 6th podcast to discuss this movie. There are a lot of podcasts.
When I was looking into it, I'm like, oh, looks like a few people have gone back and watched this.
Yeah, we're not the only ones. I think we may have a more favorable opinion of it than other people. One thing I did find interesting was I found a listing page for a closed auction from 2009. And that auction was for Gnorm.
Whoa.
Remember, Travis, you and I last week were looking at those really beautiful shots of Gnorm on IMDb and wondering where they came from. They were shots from the auction of the puppet.
Oh.
The hero puppet was used for all walking, talking, and general acting. It had interchangeable heads, which no longer exist, but the main head was included with the puppet that was sold. Also included was a lighting stand in which it was used for long shots of driving and stuff. It fully finished, painted, and costume duplicate created for the film by the same artists at Stan Winston Studio that created the hero character puppets. And it even had the lumen in the bag around his neck.
Wow.
And it also came with a 3D lenticular gnome named Gnorm poster if you bought the puppet. And then it included this photo too, where the Gnorm puppet is laying on the floor and looks like a corpse of a gnome, and it's weird. Because let's be real, Gnorm only looks weird.
Yes.
I love the design of this guy. We could talk.
But it doesn't look like anything you recognize or have seen before.
No, it looks like it could vaguely. It looks vaguely Dark Crystal-esque, actually. But you're less familiar with that, I know. But
I'm still familiar with how they look, and that's the only thing I can come up with.
It's the closest thing, but it's got more human eyes. It's got more angular features, rougher skin. It's a weird, creepy-looking little thing. Before I get into discussing the personnel, which I think is interesting, I do want to say just that if nothing else, I do think that this movie totally works on the basis of the fact of how well this puppet works. For me, I mean, I don't know if it's just because I've been watching the movie for so many years, but I have no problem suspending the disbelief with Gnorm. That's just like a character in the movie to me. I think it's an absolutely amazing puppet and work of art.
Oh, yeah. No, completely agree.
The expression they're able to get out of the face is just, it's incredible. It's really incredible work, especially for 1988. It's just really... Yeah.
The way the eyes move, and I think they dilate somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
Which I know when he was working on Jurassic Park, that was something he really wanted to put in there, was the dilation of the animal's eyes just brings this life to them.
So much. It's such a little thing, and it does so much to add to the reality of the character. So like we said, this movie was directed by Stan Winston. It's one of 2 feature films that he directed, the other one being Pumpkinhead, like we mentioned. If you're for some reason unfamiliar with Stan Winston, he is the special effects legend behind the effects in the Terminator series, the first 3 Jurassic Park movies, Aliens, the first 2 Predators, Edward Scissorhands, Iron Man, and so many more. He won 4 Academy Awards and was apparently nominated for the movie Heartbeeps. I don't recommend anybody watch the movie Heartbeeps. It's very bad. It is a 1981 movie starring Andy Kaufman as a robot. It stars Andy Kaufman and Bernadette Peters and Randy Quaid, and the plot is 2 household robots run away and try to start a family. You would think that would be worth watching, even if it's supposed to be bad. I promise you it's not. It's really upsetting how not worth watching the movie is. Andy Kaufman was very upset with the fact that he ever agreed to do it, and the only reason he agreed to do it was so he could get the movie, so he could get another movie made, which the Tony Clifton story, which actually never wound up being made. But Stan Winston was nominated for an Academy Award on that. So much like Oscar-winning Suicide Squad and Oscar-nominated Norbit, Heartbeeps was nominated for an Oscar in the early 80s. Stan also directed short films T2 3D Battle Across Time, which was the Terminator 2 ride at Universal.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And Michael Jackson's Ghost. His contribution to Hollywood cannot be understated. Tom Savini wishes he was Stan Winston.
Oh, yeah. Who's the other one? Who's the guy? Who's the Walking Dead guy?
Nicotero.
Yeah, Nicotero. I guarantee it's like that, too.
Yeah, although I have my own opinions on Tom Savini. I don't think Tom Savini was ever as talented as either Stan Winston or Nicotero's former partners, Howard Berger and Kurtzman. Robert Kurtzman? I can't remember Kurtzman's first name. But KNB Effects was the effects company for the longest time. And and I've also interacted with Tom Savini. Like, he's a jackass.
I remember we were at a Detroit Comic-Con. I was dressed as Indiana Jones.
Yep.
And he was really adamant about me showing him my whip. And I was like, no, I'm just going to hold on. He's like, no, let me see it. And I'm like, no, I'm not taking it off.
Yeah, I do remember. I've interacted with him a number of times. He's from Pittsburgh and, just kind of happened around Pittsburgh. I've interacted with him a handful of times. One of the times was at some convention when he was like kind of an ass to me when I was like, 15 years old or something. Like, how are you going to be an asshole to a kid that's like a horror nut when he's 15? But that's Savini. But when he came in to do his panel, he had like a Q&A panel that I went to go see, and it was like in this little box conference room in this crappy convention center in Pittsburgh. And to enter the room, he cracked his whip, which in that room, without warning, was painful. But he will take any opportunity to show off the fact that he can crack a whip. Savini. Has nothing to do with this movie. I'm going to talk about the 2 people that have screenplay credits on the movie because their careers are actually pretty much one and the same. They seem to be writing partners and have been for many decades now. Penn Densham and John Watson. Penn Densham is credited with the story, and they are both credited with the screenplay. Mostly working on television after the early 90s, and in the 90s we're working on the 90s revival versions of The Twilight Zone and The Outer Limits. Other feature credits include, on the writing end, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. So just let that sink in that the big Kevin Costner Robin Hood movie was penned by the same people who wrote A Gnome Named Gnorm. Also, Moll Flanders and Larger Than Life, the Bill Murray elephant movie that you may remember.
Yes. From
the brief, weird spat of elephant movies in the late 90s.
Yeah, Operation Dumbo Drop.
Yep, that was another one. It might only be those 2, but still, for there to be 2 elephant movies within 2 years is odd.
Smokey and the Bandit 2. which is not from the 90s, but is another elephant movie.
I did not know that was an elephant movie. That's great.
It is.
And on the producing end of things, they worked as producers on films like Backdraft, Tank Girl, and The Dangerous Lives of Altar Boys. So interesting careers from these two people. It doesn't seem to be in any one genre, and it's over the course of many years. They're still working to 2019. They still had some partner writing credits. There are a few people on the movie credited as producers, but the name that I zoomed in on was Scott Krupp. Scott Krupp, actually, I think Scott Krupp producing, I think, goes a good way toward explaining why this movie exists. Scott Krupp is, from everything I've been able to discern, I've watched interviews with this guy, I've listened to commentaries by this guy, seems to be a really good human being. And he's been the steward of the Bill and Ted franchise since 1987. He produced the first two films, was on the side of the writers and Alex and Keanu with the direction that they wanted to go in for Bogus Journey. The studio wanted them to go in a direction where, like, they went into literary. They was an English class, and they'd go visit historical or literary figures. And they were like, we don't want to do that at all. And Krupp backed them up on that. And he has also produced Bill and Ted Face the Music, which is now coming out August 28th. And in addition to that, other producing credits include, I love this list of movies, Jumanji, Kazam, Very Bad Things, Runaway Bride, What Dreams May Come, Teaching Mrs. Tingle, Pitch Black, Zathura, and Limitless. And
I said he did Jumanji and Zathura.
Right? I just think that, like, I love so many of these movies I really actually love. And I think it speaks to the type of producer he is. He really goes after stuff that he thinks is interesting and really tries to push that through and let the voice on the page and the voice behind the camera shine, rather than having these things morphed, by outside forces. I think Scott Krupp is a really interesting producer, and I think, to me, that makes this movie make more sense in terms of its existence. The director of photography was a guy named Bojan Bazeli. I think I am pronouncing that correctly. Who I actually sent an email to his management trying to get him to come on the podcast for an interview, and I did not hear back, which is unfortunate. I would love to ask somebody questions about this movie.
Yeah, because as you found out, we're not getting any answered by the internet.
No, we got nothing. I mean, like, I feel like there should be like a whole supplement podcast that we do where, like, we really hammer after these interviews and try to explain the ones we can't explain. That's a whole other project. I love that. That'd be great. We can talk about it. We can try to make it happen. Other notable works of his include King of New York, Boxing Helena, California with a K, Surviving the Game, which is I was telling you, Travis, last week, is a really fun 90s adaptation of The Most Dangerous Game, starring Ice-T as the hunted, and Rutger Hauer is one of the main hunters, and, like, John C. McGinley and I can't even remember. Charles S. Dutton and F. Murray Abraham. It's an absolutely amazing cast. It's everything out of what you would want out of, like, a kind of cheap, silly action movie from 1994. It's so fun. The remake of The Ring, Hairspray the musical, Burlesque, Rock of Ages, The Lone Ranger, the remake of Pete's Dragon, A Cure for Wellness, and recently the movie Underwater, with what's her name? Kristen Stewart. Yeah. And by the way, that movie is super good. Yeah. Don't listen to any reviews. Anybody, that Underwater is a great movie. Watch it. I also want to mention that Bojan Bazeli was the DP on a movie called Tapeheads from 1988, starring John Cusack and Tim Robbins, about a couple of creative losers who accidentally become big shots in the music video industry. It is an incredibly 1988 movie. Really enjoy that one. The score was composed by a composer named Richard Gibbs. You might not know it, but you've definitely heard Ribbs' work on stuff like Say Anything, Season 1 of The Simpsons, Son-in-Law, The Chase, Clifford, First Kid, Dirty Work, Dr. Dolittle, 10 Things I Hate About You, and the Battlestar Galactica miniseries. What you may not know about Richard Gibbs is he was the other member of Oingo Boingo, aside from Danny Elfman, to move on to a long career in scoring. He left Oingo Boingo in about 1983. And if you are listening to this podcast and enjoy Danny Elfman music and are unfamiliar with Oingo Boingo, just go listen to some Oingo Boingo. It's like no one's writing rock songs in 15/8 time anymore, and it's a shame because that was what Danny Elfman was doing when he was in Oingo Boingo. I'm just going to call out the whole key Gnorm crew. These were the people credited as key sculptors, key art department, and key mechanical on the Gnorm puppet. Craig Canton, Greg Feigl, Richard J. Landon, Frank Charles Lutkus III, Shane Mahan, John Rosengrant, Shannon Shea, and Mike Tursick. Amazing work by these artists at Stan Winston Studios to create Gnorm. And one other minor, not minor, it's not minor in this case, but offbeat credit. Mike Avery, credited as Gnorm Wrangler / stand-in. I think that first of all, did you come across Mike Avery in your Trek connections?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then I'll save that bit. But stunts on Three Ninjas, The Little Rascals, Anchorman, and Reno 911 Miami. I think he's a little stunt person. And, was also Gnorm. Helped bring Gnorm to life. So, good job, Mike Avery. Because when Gnorm was, moving around, just, free walking, it still looked, great. It looked so good.
Yeah. For those shots, I thought for sure it was a child. Because the proportions
skinny
that you need for somebody like that, they usually get kids to do it because the proportions of somebody who's smaller doesn't usually work out that way.
Right.
So I thought for sure it was a kid.
Mike Avery. So that's all I got about personnel in this movie. What do you want to tell us about the cast on this movie, Travis? It's a great cast.
Yeah. So starring, we've got Anthony Michael Hall, who plays Casey.
Yeah.
He wasn't really known for much, except for 16 Candles, Breakfast Club, Weird Science, just anything John Hughes.
And then what was that show he was the lead in for years? Was it The Dead Zone?
Oh, I think so.
But yeah, Anthony Michael Hall. Yeah. John Hughes is Anthony Michael Hall. Kind of fresh out of the Brat Pack, actually, also, at the time that this movie was shot in 88.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, he's still, so, baby face.
Yeah.
And Sarah was asking afterwards, she's like, oh, whatever happened to him? And I'm like, he's still working. But when you look up Anthony Michael Hall today and what he does, you would not know. You've probably seen him a lot. You didn't know it was Anthony Michael Hall.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't look like the same person he was, and he doesn't do the same person or the same kind of roles he used to do.
Not at all. I've always been very curious what in his life happened that led his face to the point that it is now. Which is that's not an insult. I've just been curious about such a thing because it became kind of unrecognizable after a certain point.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You look at him, and I'm like, I can kind of see it.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing. It's not like you look at Mickey Rourke and you're like, what happened? You look at Anthony Michael Hall and you're like, he looks like a normal, older person who is healthy. He looks so unlike his younger self.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And then we've got Jerry Orbach, who played Stan Walton, and he is most notable for Law and Order. And I didn't know he voiced Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
But it's also worth pointing out that he played this police chief or whatever before he was in Law and Order.
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. But a story, I think it's a dark joke, but so Jerry Orbach passed away a number of years ago now. And I don't know, Travis, have you spent any time in New York City taking the subway?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Summer of 07.
Okay, so you know how the subway ads are, the overhead, those long things. So after Jerry Orbach died, I was in New York that summer, because I was in New York most summers around that time, and there were ads to try to get people to become organ donors. And the angle that they were using on that was Jerry Orbach had passed. Jerry Orbach was an organ donor, and there was a person who needed an eye transplant who got Jerry Orbach's eyes, and now this person can see, and championing the organ donor program. But then you just got to think like, but then a person sitting on the subway, that there's someone walking around with Jerry Orbach's eyes. Someone is walking around seeing the world through Jerry Orbach's eyes, and what might that be like? That's all. That's all.
I want to just produce a parody of Private Eyes, but it's Orbach's eyes.
You totally could. You should do it.
Yeah.
It's also worth noting that his character's name in this movie is Stan Walton, which is not that far off from Stan Winston.
I thought that too. I'm like, it's interesting. The director and this character have similar names.
And there's another bit with that in the cast that we'll come to too, with the bad guys.
Yeah. Then we've got Claudia Christian, who played Samantha. She is most notable for being in Babylon 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's also in I've mentioned this movie on the podcast before, but The Hidden from 1987 with Kyle MacLachlan she's in. I really like Claudia Christian. I've always really liked Claudia Christian.
Yeah. And then we've got Eli Danker, played Zadar. And I really don't have anything on this guy.
Did this guy do anything?
I mean, he did a bunch of stuff, but I did not recognize like a single thing he did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm scrolling and
try to find anything.
I mean, I've seen episodes of TV shows that he's been in, but I can't say that like I remember him from like the episode of MacGyver where he played Yanif, or or like I just didn't watch any of these shows.
Yeah. So
no.
I felt bad doing that, being like this guy of no notable.
But to mention his character name, which is basically the last name of Robert Zadar, one of his henchmen.
Exactly. Yeah. Because then next on the list is Robert Zadar, who plays the henchman, and he was Reggie in Tango and Cash. Or no, he played Reggie in this movie, and then in Tango and Cash, he was Face. He was in Samurai Cop. He was in Beastmaster 2. He's just in a ton of things.
Yeah, I think Maniac Cop 2 and 3 he's in. He had a real face. Which I don't know if I have. Do I have my browser window queued up? No. Oh, yes, I do. Just faded this real quick. Yeah, he has this real face that is the Robert Zadar face.
Yeah. That was not a prosthetic.
No, that's just his massive jaw that he had. Yeah. I always like it when he got kind of like sad to look at when he got older before he passed away. I think he hadn't been too kind to his body, and that manifested in a face that was already uniquely constructed. But yeah,
you mean like Mickey Rourke?
Kind of, yeah. But yeah, I always like when he pops up because he is such a unique kind of looking person.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Then we've got Mark Haralick, who played Detective Kaminsky. And looking at this guy's IMDb, and I'm like, wow, he plays just like a bunch of just unlikable characters.
Yeah, he kind of does.
He in Jurassic Park 3, he was in the very beginning. He plays the jackass boyfriend who gets them stuck on the island and dies.
Yep.
And then he was Dave Novotny in Election, who is also like just a slimy character who does terrible things. And then I saw he was also in 42, which I've not seen. And I'm like, I wonder what his character is like. So I looked up the real life historical figure that he plays, Herb Pennock, who he was notable for being a supporter of segregation in baseball. So I'm like, yeah, he played another slimy character in 42, I can guess.
So this guy has a wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Oh, I recently saw him in Castle Rock. He was in one of the seasons of Castle Rock, and I believe he was still like a slime ball in that.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend Castle Rock, by the way. It's a good show.
Nice.
But yeah, I enjoy him a lot in this movie. Actually, He's very good at that slime ball thing. And he's got this kind of little weasel face that you just want to punch.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And that's really like all of the main players. And then it's also worth noting that we've got Michael Faustino, who plays a little boy in this movie.
I didn't even notice. Oh my god! But that must have been why. Is that why we started talking about Gnome Named Norm?
That's what led us here.
Okay.
Was Michael Faustino from the past 2 shows we've done. We've completed the trilogy.
Did you happen to look up Rob Paulsen, the voice of Norm?
Oh, you know what? I mean, I've got his name listed here, and I've got like 16 people listed who played Norm, which you named the majority of them already.
Okay.
No, I do not have his voice credits pulled up.
Yeah, I'm trying to. IMDb is loading slowly for me, but you know him as Yakko Warner, or perhaps Pinky, or like one of 521 credits. He's a working voice actor. Yeah. He's a working voice actor, people. He's everybody. That's another thing we didn't talk about in the news is Animaniacs is coming back. Oh, yeah. Complete with Pinky and the Brain. I wonder if we'll get more Rob Paulsen with that.
I would think so.
Oh, he played apparently in Lego Star Wars The Padawan Menace. He played Commander Cody and George Lucas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, we could be scrolling down this list for days. But
he also has a voice in the If You Give a Mouse a Cookie TV series, which
I'm unfamiliar.
My son has gotten into recently.
Oh, nice. I mean, I'm seeing him I'm seeing him credited for like every animated show that I've been aware of for the last 20 years. Like he's in everything.
Samurai Jack, Ben 10, Curious George.
I'm seeing Fairly Odd Parents. I'm seeing Land Before Time sequels. I'm seeing Stripperella, which was Stan Lee's cartoon.
Scooby-Doo, Kim Possible.
Buzz Lightyear.
Let's just do this the whole show.
Oh, remember Hysteria? Do you remember that kind of Animaniacs spin-off show? He was on that too, apparently. Which makes sense. He was probably just in the wheelhouse. Oh, he was in Thumb Wars.
Oh my. Wow.
All right, but we're moving on. Okay. But Rob Paulsen, vocal magic.
So yeah, and then as you said, like Norm was played by so many different talented people, and he did the voice, and everybody else brought him to life physically. And then, so that's all I really have right now for just the cast in general, and then we can move right into Trek connections.
Da, 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 da. Oh wait, you do that later. Here's Trek connections.
So yeah, for the Trek connections, Mark Herlick played a character named Kashyyyk.
What?
It's spelled the same way without the extra Y.
I did not know that.
It was Kashyyyk in an episode of Voyager.
That's amazing. That's him in the center.
Yeah. And then Mike Avery, as we mentioned, he did stunts for Insurrection, though I do not have any visuals for him in here.
Makes sense.
The bottom left, we've got Michelle Johnston, who played a stripper. Must have been in that extended scene that got cut.
Yeah, I think so.
She was a holosuite dancer in the Deep Space Nine episode Bada Bing Bada Bang. And then right above her, we've got Steve Suskind, who played the CPR guy, who tried to do CPR on empty body. And he was in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, and he played a pitchman to lure people to Nimbus 3.
Oh my gosh, now I'm remembering that very specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Ren T. Brown, who played the Hearst driver, he is both of the images on the right. He played a shuttle pilot in Next Generation, and then later he played Kolar, Klingon in Voyager.
Nice. That's great. That's a fair number of Trek connections in this movie.
Yeah, and there's one more, another one that doesn't have a visual because it didn't happen. but Claudia Christian auditioned to play Kira Nerys in Deep Space Nine, and later she auditioned to play Seven of Nine in Voyager.
Oh, I could easily see an alternate universe in which she was Seven of Nine.
Yeah,
easily. She had that. Her and Jerry Ryan have the similar eyes. I think those big blue eyes. I think they're blue. I don't know. Big eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You sent me another couple images actually that we've forgotten to bring up. One is a great alternate title of this movie. Of which I'm also seeing like an alternate title on IMDb that says Space Cop.
I saw that too.
And
I'm like,
France was Galactic Cop.
Yeah, but that doesn't make sense. This one does make sense. This is what it was called in Spain and Argentina, which was Gnomo Cop.
Gnomo Cop. I love that title.
And I love this VHS box art for it too.
Pretty great. I'm glad you found this imagery.
The word bubbles on the other one.
Yeah.
The fantastic.
This is great. And then you found a 30th anniversary Facebook post thing.
Yeah.
I missed this.
Stan Winston school. Yeah, they posted like it was just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, that's amazing. So somebody
I love
there.
That image of Stan Winston holding Norm's hand, and it looks like they're locking it like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Grief Karga.
I love the comments on this Facebook post too. Like we have two people who are like very into it. One's who's like the censored version is on Amazon, really hoping the uncensored Upworld version gets a Blu-ray release. And another person says, "If Lumen die, my people die." But then we have just the person who feels the need to let the world know, "I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with this movie."
Yeah.
Those people who comment stuff like that on public page profiles on Facebook, I'm like, what do you hope to achieve here? Anyway,
it's just very strange. Instead of saying something like that, be like, "Oh, I've never heard of this. Let me check it out."
Right. Sorry, I've never seen it. I feel like this post is challenging me to see it, but I have to tell you, I've never seen it. Like what? Anyway. So yeah, interesting. I guess it was the 30th anniversary if it came out in 1990 originally. So yeah.
Also interesting on Tubi, when we pull it up on Tubi to watch, and I know that their data has got to be like, it's all messed up. It's got a 1997 release on the Tubi version. Yeah.
I noticed that. I've noticed a bunch of wrong release years on Tubi, but that one's pretty drastic. I mean, especially but it's a little bit understandable considering the weird release history this movie had. But I mean, IMDb says 1990. Just say 1990. That's a fair average.
Should say 90 or 92.
Yeah. But nitpicking Tubi. Oh, if only to work data management on the back end of Tubi, we could fix this problem. Yeah. You got anything else, or is it time to nitpick?
Yeah, that's all we have on the background.
Yeah, let's dive into the movie and some specifics a little bit. The general plot is like the Gestalt is Gnorm has come up to what he calls Upworld. Gnomes live underground. He comes up to Upworld because of this little rock, this little glowing rock called the Lumen. And during the course of the movie, what we learn is that the Lumen must be exposed to the Upworld sun once every 10 years. And once that is happened and it absorbs the energy it needs, it can then be the sun for the gnome world for 10 years before another gnome has to come up and revitalize the Lumen. Gnorm initially plays himself off as a warrior gnome because warriors are the ones to come up and recharge the Lumen. But it comes out that he is a lowly digger, a lowly tunneling gnome who has his sights on a beautiful lady gnome, a puka, named Rena. And lady gnomes are impressed by warriors. So Gnorm wanted to impress the lady and wound up accidentally showing up in Griffith Park when a deal was going down between the police and crime boss are trying to do a sting that went wrong, and Gnorm happened to be a witness.
It's a key witness.
Yeah, the only witness.
Yeah.
So the movie opens in the Gnome world, and actually the Gnome world quite a bit reminded me of some of the scenery from the Ewok movies.
Exactly. That's what Sarah and I said. I'm waiting for the Gorax to show up.
It really looked like the Gorax cave, right?
Yeah.
We go to the police station. Jerry Orbach is our police captain, and Anthony Michael Hall is really on like maximum Anthony Michael Hall mode for the entirety of this movie. It is a very over-the-top, shouty, post-teenage performance.
Yeah.
Almost kind of felt like a proto Jake Peralta kind of a character.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, cops wouldn't have this tie. The snakeskin tie, this is not a cop tie. Stuff like this. What else? What do you have anything about the beginning of the movie you wanted to bring up?
No, like other than just like that, the strange similarities in that cave that Gnorm was in, and then like his ability to dig, which we see here, and it doesn't really come into play. They don't heavily rely on that until later.
Yeah,
it really becomes like a big thing in the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, it becomes like a superpower in the last bit of the movie.
Yeah.
He's tunneling through concrete and everything. It's really, and some good effects of that too. It's pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
I dig that in the beginning of the movie, all these nighttime scenes, it's really kind of shot like a horror movie.
Yeah.
You can see the visual similarity, like from the stuff that like Stan Winston was kind of known for, like at least the world in which he was known, and obviously a DP who had shot his horror film before in Pumpkinhead, which does mostly take place at night, as I recall. So I did really dig that the photography was really a lot like a horror movie, very heavy on playing with shafts of light and large swaths of shadow. And one of the other first things I noticed is after the whole deal goes bad, a guy blows up. There's a dude that blows up.
Yeah, he just literally dies.
Man explodes.
This movie has so many turns where we're like, whoa, that just that happened, and that was the first one of these. Where I was like, wow,
a man explodes in the children's
murder.
Park. Yeah. So of course Casey, Anthony Michael Hall's character, has like a cherry red convertible with the license plate Oink, OYNK. Yeah. And of course the bad guy also has a convertible. And Angela and I wondered, did none of the cops that were patrolling the park see this other car that was there and had its lights off, was present the entire time? Seems like an oversight.
Yeah.
Which could be a purposeful oversight, knowing what we know at the end of the movie. But and Gnorm is slow to be revealed too. They really tease the full reveal of Gnorm for a lot of the first, what is it, like 15 minutes almost?
Mm-hmm. Take their time with it.
Yeah. And
it's like the shark in Jaws.
Yeah. Or like RoboCop.
Yeah. Or just like anything else that like Stan Winston worked on, like the raptors in Jurassic Park. Mm-hmm. Kind of tends to do that.
Yeah. And he's fully revealed when he's in this little cage that Anthony Michael Hall has him in, and he has this wonderful, like, low, creepy growl. And I think one of the features that's, like, maybe creepiest about Gnorm, like, physically, is that his teeth look very human. They're not, like, short teeth. They're not spiky teeth. They're not, like, jacked up, really. They're just, like, human teeth in the mouth of this weird gnome. And it gives this kind of uncanniness to him that I think makes him really interesting looking, or helps too.
That's what they got in trouble with the initial Sonic design.
Yes, the weird human teeth.
Don't give creatures human teeth.
Don't do it.
Us out.
It does freak us out. And really, like, I feel so bad for the effects artists who had to go and deal with that on Sonic, but really, like, why was the decision ever made to make Sonic not look like Sonic has always looked? Like, I don't care, but like, who made that? Anyway. I like Casey's apartment in this movie very much. I like how it's decorated. It's very much decorated like, you know, this like 20-year-old cop could not possibly have the life that he has kind of apartment. It's like really well furnished. There's this cool like Sunoco sign. He's got this giant Spider-Man comic book cover art poster on the wall. It's great. I love how it looks.
Yeah, it's really nice.
We have met Sam at this point in the movie, Claudia Christian's character. And one thing I do like about Sam in this movie is Sam is having none of any man's BS in this whole movie. Like, she, you know, she has a lot of catcalling and various crap kind of directed at her, and she's not having any of it. Like, she does wind up with Anthony Michael Hall because it's 1990 and we must. But, like, for the rest of the movie... and she uses that at the end too with Kaminsky in a good game. Yeah. Which I liked. And then and it's also around this time that we get kind of an indication that Gnorm has some, like, I don't want to go so far as to say psychic powers or suggestive abilities, but he has a super powerful suggestive yawn that will just put you right to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah, he just has that power that he can... At first, I didn't realize... When he does it the first time, I'm like, oh, this is just kind of a one-off thing that happened. And then when he continues to use it throughout the movie, I'm like, oh, this is an actual power he has... Like you said, like suggestion that he has over really anybody, not just Anthony Michael Hall.
Who's up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and would be tired anyway. And then we learn that he also doesn't understand glass when he does a thing like a bird and tries to just run away through a glass door and slams into it. And I did note that Screenplay, rule of threes, he puts people to sleep with yawns 3 times, and he runs into glass 3 times during the course of the film. I like that kind of stuff. The first time we hear him talk, he's like this squeaky, like, "No, eat lumen." And we first hear his like kind of creepy voice,
where he seems to be, like you said, like very broken English. Doesn't seem to. You don't know if he understands it that well, but then very quickly it becomes apparent like he can speak pretty normally.
Yeah, he can speak pretty fluently and understands like silent G's, which we'll get to because that's one of my favorite lines in the movie. But I also thought it was really funny when Anthony Michael Hall is trying to describe Gnorm to Sam. He just goes, "He's got big ears. He's a little guy and he's got big ears." He's like, he's not going into any of the other specifics that make Gnorm very odd looking.
No. I like when when he's trying to describe what he's wearing, and he's like, it's like barky. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I would describe that as well.
Yeah. So Casey, for a little while, only continues to describe Gnorm with like the same 5 words, like small, fast, big ears. Like he just only uses that language to describe Gnorm for a big chunk of the movie. But then when Gnorm sees Sam for the first time, he begins objectifying every woman that he sees in the whole movie.
Yeah, it becomes a weird thing.
It does become a weird thing.
And then you mentioned like there's an extended like stripper club scene, and I'm like, I can only imagine like that Gnorm was doing.
Yeah, and because what are the words? Roundy is butt.
Yeah.
Bobos is boobs.
I thought it was popos.
Oh, it was
Maybe
popos.
Yeah.
And Puka is lady. And I also think Shuba is, if I'm going to translate into Ewokese, Lurdo.
Oh.
I really like when movies do that kind of thing, when we just get like a little bit of like the lingo, like, you know, the otherworldly character speaks English but has their own slang.
Yeah.
I always like that. And another thing I like about Gnorm throughout the movie as a character is Gnorm as a character obviously feels intellectually superior to literally every human being he interacts with.
Yeah.
Which I just
get one
love.
over on him.
No. I love it. He's like, oh my god, these idiot Upworlders. Jeez. The whole
Let
movie.
me shoot you with a gun sideways.
Yep. He doesn't understand how to use the gun, we learn at the end of the movie.
He also really loves to bite dudes, like either on the butt or on the balls.
Yeah. So really soon after this chunk, really around this part of the movie, they go back to Casey's apartment and it's been ransacked because Zadar is there and ransacking the apartment looking for the part of the deal that he lost out on last night, which is our first indication that there's a third party at work amongst the whole thing. But so Gnorm attacks Zadar by biting his butt and then reaching around and what I can only assume was a death grip on his balls.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it was like, this is a really nasty attack. Gnomes fight dirty. So, yeah. And I also, this is also where we first hear the term slug slime, which I really like. As a term that Gnorm uses. But I find it interesting. So Zadar has goons. We meet his goons in the first scene that we meet him in the movie. For a lot of the movie, Zadar is doing his own henching. I don't really understand why. Like, he's the one that breaks into Casey's apartment and ransacks it. It's not Reggie or the other guy. When they go on a chase later, Zadar's not backed up by any of his hench people. He's just on this car chase by himself and trying to fend for himself. Like, he's the only movie bad guy that has goons that, like, never uses the goons.
I mean, in every other movie, the goons are so incompetent that the bad guy is eventually like, I'm doing this myself. So he just, they
just cut out the middle.
Cut out the middle part, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And now we get to this scene at Muscle Beach, which Casey gets the best parking spot at Muscle Beach, which is like behind the stand opposing to it. I don't know if anybody listening to this podcast has ever tried to park in Venice, California, but that is an unheard of parking space. Gnorm continues to be obsessed with bopos and is just ogling all the scantily clad women. And he's also in a disguise now. Casey's got him dressed up in children's clothes, which is somehow creepier than him in his normal clothes.
Mm-hmm.
It is the first of many funny costume changes, funny and kind of inexplicable costume changes Gnorm has throughout the movie.
Yeah. It's also just kind of a trope that they do in these movies where somebody has a small creature that they're trying to keep secret, and they're like, we got to dress him up as a kid.
That's true.
Do it in E.T. Trying to think if James Marsden does it to Sonic the Hedgehog in Sonic.
I can't remember if he does.
Yeah. And then I was trying to think, do they do it in Mac and Me?
They might. They do it in Shan Silent Bob Strike Back.
That's right.
This is our constitutionally protected love child. Oh boy. And this is also the spit agreement scene.
Yes.
Where this is where Gnorm like unloads to Casey about what the deal with the lumen and everything, and he makes him spit on it. And Gnorm produces literally, I think, the grossest loogie ever committed to film. There is so much thick saliva that emits from that thing's mouth.
This shot reminded me of another shot, speaking of Kevin Smith films, in Clerks 2.
Yes!
You know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about, yes. And now I'm thinking, like, reading that description from the auction of the puppet, like, I wonder if there was, like, a whole separate Gnorm head, that head was the spitting head.
There had to have been. It looked like the same head that they used for, like, the kissing and whistling, but they must have just, like, fed a tube through it.
Yeah. And this is where my favorite line in the movie is, where Gnorm informs him that he is a gnome and that his name is Gnorm. And Casey challenges him, if you were a gnome, you would know the G is silent. To which Norm responds, no, it's not. Which always makes me laugh. This is also where the Lowrider music cue is, which is, I think, where I first heard the song Lowrider. And that was the song in the trailers. That was the song in the TV spots for this movie. And the reason I think Disney Channel is because I remember seeing commercials for it. Like, I remember seeing, like, coming up, you know, a gnome named Norm probably have rabies. You know, like, there's certain lines of dialogue that I, like, remember more pointedly than others. And this scene, too, Norm puts Casey to sleep and goes and checks out the beach by himself. And I think it's actually probably the best shot in the movie. There's a really great shot that starts as a frontal close-up on Norm as he's looking out into the ocean, which wraps around Norm to the back of his head and pulls like way back to reveal the full figure of Norm standing and just looking out at the ocean and seeing this grandeur that he's never seen before. It's a really nice shot. And if I remember correctly, there must have been some remote control with going on with the face, because the face was expressive before the camera pulls back and reveals that it's just a freestanding puppet. Yeah.
Unless they buried somebody in the sand.
They could have done that too. They could have buried cables or buried a human being.
Yeah.
But really, really nice shot in the movie. I like that shot a lot.
Mm-hmm. Also, like this, like cool moment for a character that is like, oh, I've never seen the ocean or the water.
Yeah. Norm does get those moments, or Gnorm gets those moments in this movie. Mm-hmm. So they move the stake out to Chinatown. They went to Muscle Beach because they were looking for Reggie, who they found working out, and they follow him to Chinatown. And now Norm appears in a baby outfit and stroller. Yes. There's a real question as to where the baby outfit and stroller come from. Why might Casey have those already? That probably has a weird answer.
I noticed, this has nothing to do with that, but like I noticed in his garage, he puts Norm in a cage, and there's also a ton of other cages that he has.
Yeah. Like, why does he have a bunch of cages? He has no animals.
Yeah.
He has convenient supplies is what he has.
Mm-hmm.
So...
But yeah, that like really disarms Reggie, and he's like, "Oh,
yeah,
well, I'm gonna treat this baby kid very nicely.
When they confront,
I'm gonna let him climb all over me."
Yeah, when they confront Reggie, I love that like Reggie is lecturing Casey about being a parent because he's seemingly legitimately concerned about the idea that Casey has a child that he's bringing on police work. Yeah. It didn't seem like he was chastising for any other reason than legitimate concern, which I thought was really funny.
But then, like, he hangs him up, and he's like, maybe going to like murder the kid's father right in front of him.
But he's going like Gucci Gucci Goo while Norm hangs out on his shoulder.
Yeah. He also didn't really seem to notice that Norm was climbing up on him at first.
And also never comments on actually how weird Norm looks.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't look like a well child if he looks like a child. No. I like this scene. I think this scene is really funny. When Reggie has him pinned up against the wall, Casey or Anthony Michael Hall, he kind of does one of this thing with his voice.
Yeah.
And puts it up really high. And like that's his being strangled voice. And he used that vocal trick, Anthony Michael Hall. I think he does it in Weird Science a little bit. Mm-hmm. That's just one of the things he can do with his voice, and I thought it was a good application of it in this instance. He gets hung on a hook in the meat freezer, and I think the meat freezer segment is like really funny. But then what Norm does is, do you want to say it?
No, you say.
He meat hooks Reggie right in the ball sack. And then Reggie falls into the butchery runoff tub full of blood and fat and who knows what else. Surely his balls are going to get a bacterial infection. Surely. That is a really entirely unpleasant scenario. And I think that's the last we see Reggie in the movie. Am I right?
It is. And I was not... I mean, everything about the sequence just like through... That was like the next thing where it was like, whoa. But But when he falls back in there, that's immediately. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's not going to be good for that wound. But then I'm like, we're going to see him come back. Surely we're going to they didn't kill this character. He's going to come back in some significant way in the third act. But no.
For all we know, he died in the runoff tank. For all we know. I hope he didn't. For Reggie's sake. For Reggie's sake.
It was actually hard for me to tell. You said he got him in the balls. I didn't know if he got him in the butt with it.
I'm just gonna say the balls because I think that's funnier. I wrote down meat hooks him right in the balls, and I wanted to say that on a podcast. And now I have. But he may have hooked him in the butt. It may have been a butt shot. But in the groinular area, a meat hook was introduced.
It makes me sad that we've lost Stan Winston and we can never ask him this question.
Yeah, because even the DP wouldn't be able to answer. Now, when Reggie meat hooked Gnorm, was it in the balls or the butt? We have to know.
See, because I guarantee every interview he's had, he's never been asked that question. So.
Literally no one has ever been asked that question. No one has ever been asked that very important question.
Well, nobody else has made art that's inspired such questions.
True. We could do some Robert Z'Dar research and see if there's any other Robert Z'Dar movies in which he gets meat hooked in the groin, and see if he has other further experience with that. That's probably full of really bad movies that you wouldn't want to sit through.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry, internet. So now Gnorm dons a new costume, which is just a raincoat and rain hat.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Casey make their way to Z'Dar and his office in the back of a strip club.
Yeah.
Chase ensues. Casey commandeers a car for police business and winds up leading a funeral procession because that car was a hearse.
Yeah.
And I really like this chase scene. It's a fun hijinksy chase scene. The giant spider that comes loose from the top of an exterminator's truck. Gnorm tries to hide and climbs into the casket in the back of the hearse and finds a corpse. And comes back into the front seat, just why dead man in box? Yeah. And like you mentioned earlier, the guy that tries to give CPR to the corpse, the car crashes, casket falls out, and then a very concerned citizen tries to give CPR to who he perceives as an accident victim, but is actually a corpse. And my favorite aspect of that scene is the guy has corpse makeup all over his face.
Yeah.
All of the person's death makeup is rubbed off on this concerned citizen's face, and then Casey just abandons that guy and the corpse.
He does. He's like, screw all this. I got important things to do. It's that's the mark of quality we've come to know from the LAPD. That's what it is. So what do we got now? Where are we in the movie? They park. Yeah, then Gnorm gets scared by a dog?
By loud noises.
Yeah.
He separates from Casey and cowers in fear at just the loud noises of Upworld that he's not used to. And Casey gets suspended. He's suspended from the police force by Jerry Orbach. And he meets up with Gnorm again, and Norm's all pouty, and he confesses to not being a warrior, just a tunneler. They go to Z'Dar's apartment building that Gnorm followed him to. And Gnorm is mystified by the elevator, which he calls a magic box, which I thought was funny. The Z'Dar, they make Z'Dar scream, because one of the things is Gnorm heard somebody scream in the park, or that's what he says. So they make Z'Dar scream to try to place him at the scene in terms of a witness connection. Yeah. And that's a really funny little scene. Just him going...
Yeah. The entire time he was screaming, it was hard for me to try to determine. I'm like, is he making the noise or is it Gnorm? Because
it sounds a lot like Gnorm.
Sounds so much like Gnorm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think that scene's funny. Zadar is killed. And we learn that it's Jerry Orbach who has shot him. Jerry Orbach is the actual bad guy of this movie. Plot twist. Oh my god. Stan Walton's the bad guy. And both Casey and Norm are arrested, basically, and thrown in a paddy wagon. And Casey breaks it down for Norm. Humans are basically awful. If they get you, you're a lab rat, and they're going to kill everyone in your world. And which is true. That's literally what would happen if we found out that gnomes existed under Los Angeles. Norm doesn't understand how to use the magic box elevator. That was funny. Oh yeah, it's I think it's a really funny scene when they're like booking Norm at the police station.
Yeah.
He keeps like zipping out of the mugshot photo. He won't be fingerprinted. His skin is too thick to get a needle through to draw blood. And there we also get to see naked Norm.
Yeah. Yeah, the detective says strip him.
And
so
we see Norm butt. And we see Sam react to Norm's penis, which, if I'm guessing, I'm going to say that puppet had a penis.
yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. You'd think so. The that one visual we had like a full sculpt of the puppet, not the disrobed puppet, but one that they would have put the clothes on.
Oh, true. The 30th anniversary. Yeah, let me look at that.
But I'm sure, yeah, Stan was probably like, let's make one just in case.
Yeah, almost assuredly.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I forget what I was going to say.
Oh.
All right, never mind.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Oh yeah, another part of that scene where they're trying to get him to open his mouth, and they're like, "Open your mouth, say ah," and he just keeps going. I laugh. What else we got here? So yeah, the Kaminsky character, the jerk, the slimeball character, this is when he actually starts kind of mattering to the movie. And it seems like he actually wants Casey to die. Like, he's not been a fan of Casey for the whole movie, but he tells Casey, he's like, I hope they fry you when they're taking him into the cell.
Yeah, it goes from just like I don't know, just like some ball busting at the beginning to like a heated rivalry to like...
I hope you are killed. Yeah, it's weird. Norm does a great job, though, of humiliating Kaminsky by using his yawn trick, stripping him completely naked, and then leaving out of the window.
Yeah. He's like, you strip me, I strip you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I showed you a screenshot. There was, because on IMDb, there is some plot keywords for every movie.
Oh, yeah.
And the plot keywords for this movie, there's only 7 of them. Gnome, detective, independent male, murder mystery, bare-chested male, male nudity, embarrassing male nudity. Are the plot keywords for this movie.
Yeah, this movie does have 2 male butts of different species. Yeah, that's notable.
2 roundies.
2 boy roundies.
Oh, my other thing was going to be, we never got to hear whatever Norm's slang term for penis would be.
No, we never get that.
Yeah.
I feel like there should have been a scene where, like, Norm describes, because he obviously, that's what he goes for when he's in a scrappy fight. He's going for the balls.
Yeah.
So I want, like, where's the description of, like, you don't fight correctly? You know, where's the scene where he's, like, breaking down how to fight to Casey? That's what it's missing. That's where we would have gotten the slang for the penis. That'd have been great.
You always go for the insert the gnome word.
Yeah. Oh yeah, this is about the point in the movie where the tunneling comes back in. Norm tunnels straight through concrete. through the police station in a pretty good gag with the floor being torn up as Gnorm makes his way to the cell where Casey's being held.
Mm-hmm.
This is also like Jerry Orbach's getting away. They have to chase him. Gnorm breaks Casey out of jail. I did make the observation at this point that everyone that has possession of the lumen at any point, which currently Jerry Orbach has it and Norm's trying to get it back, chooses to wear it around their neck.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, just cause, I don't know. I don't wear things around my neck, so that seems weird to me. But maybe I'm just talking about something and literally everyone that's listening to me is like, what are you talking about this for?
No, I'm sure if that were me, I'd have just put it in my pocket.
Yeah.
So.
And
then there's also a point during this sequence where Casey, where he's being like subdued and he like is breaking free, and like he's a madman. He's on the loose, and it's this like single shot that starts in one room and then it goes through, and you see like the kerfuffle and him punching dudes left and right in the other, and the music is very intense.
Yeah.
And these sound effects are all just very stock punching sound effects.
Yeah, they are. I like that. I like that kind of mayhem. I like these things. I also had the note that the lumen sack is probably the ball sack of some animal.
Oh, yeah.
Almost certainly. That's all. So they are back at the park, and the final showdown is where the initial showdown in the movie happened. The park at the old zoo in Griffith Park. And they're trying to find where the briefcase full of money actually wound up. It wound up under this merry-go-round. And Stan, Jerry Orbach, makes the remark that briefcase contains more money than he's made in 25 years on the job. And I'm just
Which is insane.
Can that possibly be true?
No, I would have to all have like, what's the biggest bill you can get?
Yeah, like
I
are
don't
they
know.
$1,000 bills? Like,
yeah,
like it can't be that much money. You cannot have been working your whole life and not made at the LAPD and not have that kind of a briefcase full of money earned in your lifetime. I don't buy it.
No, agreed.
You
should have. I mean, if you said like so many years salary, I'd been like, all right, but your whole career,
your whole career, 25 years. So classic bad guy thing where Stan pontificates about his plan long enough to be recorded and get knocked on the back of the head. But he comes back up. But good thing Gnorm is there to save the day. He tries to save the day, but then Stan shoots him. Oh no! But remember, Gnorm's got super thick skin, which is apparently bulletproof. Yeah.
So that scene earlier where he was going to shoot him in the office, it wouldn't have mattered.
Wouldn't have mattered at all. He didn't know that, but it wouldn't have mattered.
Also, in that scene where he's like about to shoot him, and then Sam walks in and he puts the gun away, like, you didn't see me doing anything. I'm like, so you were still going to shoot him, and everybody would have known and come in. Like,
right, like you're still going to fire a weapon in the office.
Yeah. You didn't have a silencer on it.
He was probably going to claim that it attacked him, that Gnorm attacked him. But, like, yeah, I mean, gun going off in the office is going to alert people. But they wrap this up pretty quickly after Gnorm shoots a gun sideways and almost shoots his friends.
There's another one of Gnorm's shots coming straight out of the ground and for the balls.
Yeah. Again, for the balls in threes. 3 instances of Gnorm going for the balls. That's the third rule of threes in the movie. The rule of threes follows the rule of threes in this movie, and balls is one of those rules. That's great. Good work, writers. And then of course, Gnorm makes out with Sam, because Gnorm kisses Sam, Claudia Christian, because he must. It's that. I mean, like, now she has gnome herpes, maybe. We don't know. And then she makes out with Casey, because of course that's what happens. Yeah. And then we get with the movie actually ends. I mean, there's a little bonus scene, but the movie ends and fades to black on Gnorm poking his head up out of the ground, doing this.
Yeah, telling him to make her toes curl.
Yeah, and where does he pick up that expression?
That's brought up. That's a line from earlier in the film.
Is it? That
I
just
think
forgot?
so. I think
Okay.
that's something that he had told Gnorm at one point.
Oh, it is. You're right.
Yeah.
He was when he was talking about Rena. You gotta, take her, kiss her, make her toes curl. Yeah, you're right. You're right. Oh, but right. We get the payoff of Kaminsky. Sam distracted Kaminsky from dealing with Casey by basically implying that she needed to have sex with him right now, and he had to go wait for her. And then he continues to wait for hours and hours and hours and hours, and eats many Zagnut bars.
Yep.
One of the movie appearances of Zagnut. So it's nice to see this slime ball humiliated again.
Just throwing the wrappers on the ground.
Right, in which the cleaning staff literally kneels underneath him as he stands in the doorway and just picks up. How much of a scumbag? Oh my god.
Yeah.
And that kind of wraps up the nuts and bolts of Gnome Named Norm. What else do you have that you wanted to mention about the movie, Travis?
Following that plot line still is when she is initially seducing him in the doorway, and he had just come from getting punched and stuff, and he's going to the cell, and he's like,
and he had just been humiliated by being stripped.
Yeah, and he had this look on his face, he did not know what to make, and he's got this weird look, and he's like, I'm reading so many things into this right now.
Yeah, when she's I wrote down the quote directly. He's like, oh man, I'm reading all sorts of things into this.
Yeah, and it's there's the one thing, but what's going on?
Yeah, reading all sorts of things. There's indications of one thing, man. Yeah. Sarah
had said, during the movie and just now, she said that the kiss was less disturbing than the one from Blank Check.
I don't disagree. Because at least Norm is probably an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is an interspecies kiss, which by itself is weird.
I was going to say, how would we have felt if Norm had kissed Brian Bonsall?
Oh, that's a good question. How would we feel about that? I would not know how to feel about that. I don't know how to feel about... That's such a different movie. I would love a multifaceted sequel that's a sequel to both Blank Check and Upworld.
Oh, that'd be fun.
That'd be weird.
I was thinking about that during this movie. I'm like, oh, it's so sad they didn't make a sequel. They could have called it Downworld, where Michael Hall has to go down into Norm's world.
I'd watch the hell out of that movie.
Yeah.
But that would mean that this movie had to make any money, and I think it did not.
No.
I should try to get in touch with Scott Krupp about this movie. He would be able to tell some stories. The producer.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho's. I'm glad we watched this. I'm glad you and Sarah had a good time.
Yep, we enjoyed it. So that's a gnome named Norm, everybody.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that this movie is easily streaming. That this is accessible.
Yeah, me too. Surprised at how accessible some of the things we've decided to watch have been.
I know. Because there was a time when these things were not. I mean, these weren't accessible in the DVD era. Because a lot of stuff we've talked about came out on VHS and then skipped 2 generations and just came out on streaming.
Yeah.
So I am thankful that some money has been put into some of this junk. So yeah, I still enjoy this film. Angela liked the movie a lot. She thought it was fun. the guy Nathan Rabin, I think, is the name of the writer who recently wrote a book about Weird Al. And he's a journalist. He did not like this movie. He reviewed it on his blog within the last year and tore it apart. I don't know what the general consensus is on how effective this movie is or how much people like this movie, but you know, it's not like an amazing thing. It's not like, you know, 1001 films you must see before you die or something. But there's some like real practical effects wizardry going on. When it's funny, it's actually like really funny, and it's like cute enough to endure the rest.
Yeah.
So I recommend.
And just the puppetry and everything that brings such life to the character.
Yeah.
And just the energy in every scene. It just works very well.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's a lot of energy throughout, like brimming throughout the movie, and a lot of it is how good the puppet performance is, how good the Gnorm performance is, and like just really like Anthony Michael Hall. I wouldn't call it like a great performance by Anthony Michael Hall, but it is a really energetic and kind of committed performance by Anthony Michael Hall.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, it is.
So Travis, let's talk about what we got coming up for the. So this is movie Madhouse, but you know the overarching thing is who watches. So we have some stuff going on.
Yeah, so we initially started doing TV reviews, specifically with Watchmen, and that's where like it got his name. And then like after we did Clone Wars, and there was no new interesting shows coming out. We're like, oh, well, we started doing movie Madhouse, and that's covered us all summer. But here coming up, we've got here in October, we're going to be doing Mandalorian Minute again, which you'll be part of, as well as Dustin and Ryan, which I'm very much looking forward to. And we have also decided that this will be the last month for Movie Madhouse, and starting in September, we are going to be reviewing the Amazon original series, The Boys.
Yep, which I need to finish watching the first season of.
Yes, and it is good. And Dustin will be joining us on that as well.
Cool. That's good. That's exciting.
Yeah. And The Boys is a very fun show, and I've got a big man crush on Carl Urban. And
I mean, since the first JJ Star Trek, like honestly, who doesn't? I watched that show Almost Human. Did you watch that show that he was on? His short-lived Fox show?
No, I haven't.
Oh, that was a fun sci-fi episodic. It's a very slight show. It's not like, you know, it's not what TV is like today, but like it's a fun sci-fi episodic starring Carl Urban that I liked a lot when it was on.
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, do. And so that means we have, I think it's 3 episodes of Movie Madhouse left that we're doing for this season of Movie Madhouse. We'll probably come back and do more, but for this iteration of it, we got 3 more. The last of which on August 31st is going to be our review of Bill and Ted Face the Music, which I cannot undersell how excited I am for this movie. I am more excited about this movie than I was any Star Wars movie that came out in the last since Disney bought them. I'm more excited for this than any of the Star Wars movies. It's not a question of if I will cry. It is a question of how many times and how much I will cry. I'm very excited about Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
So that'll be a different.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, and it'll be a different kind of an episode because we won't, we're not going to be sitting there with laptops and dissecting it. That's going to be a more reactive kind of just shoot the poop about talking about Bill and Ted kind of a podcast.
Yeah, it'll be closer to our Rise of Skywalker review.
Yeah.
Which I hope we are more favorable.
I do too.
I can't imagine what, we won't be.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the reason why I'm so hopeful about it and kind of so unrestrictedly hopeful about it is it's the original writers. It's Ed Solomon and Chris Matheson, and Ed Solomon wrote Men in Black and a lot of other stuff that you've seen. and he's a brilliant writer, and they wrote this movie on spec. They're like regular working Hollywood writers who wrote a third Bill and Ted movie on spec for years without being paid by anyone, just because they wanted to write it and just because they wanted to do it. It still has the same producer, Scott Krupp, who's making sure that they're able to make the movie that they want to make. Directed by Dean Pariseau, who directed Galaxy Quest, and most importantly, Keanu Reeves doesn't have to do anything in his career that he doesn't want to at this point. And he says no to a lot of stuff. And the fact that, like, those two are back and are like, yes, this is the Bill and Ted movie we want to make, it gives me a lot of hope that it will be the movie that me and people like me actually really want out of a third Bill and Ted movie. So, which is to say, just more stuff with these characters. You know, like, I'm very excited for it.
Because this has been just talked about forever.
For so many years.
Film.
Like, it's one of those things, like 15 years, probably. It's been talked about.
Yeah. Like you said, like Keanu said no to so many things. Like, how many versions of like potential stories has he said no to?
Like, probably countless.
Yeah.
You know? But like, I love this idea of like, oh, Bill and Ted are in their 40s or in their 50s or whatever, and they still haven't written the song.
Their parents.
Yeah, their parents. They're adult parents. I'm really excited. I'm very excited.
Yeah.
So we got 2 more movies to do, of which one is your pick. And so what are we doing next week, Travis?
So next week, I have been watching the Michael Jordan and the Bulls documentary series, The Last Dance. And with that, like, so like taking up space in my mind, I feel like there's no better time to go and revisit Space Jam.
Well, all right.
So I know it's kind of a more, I think it will have been the most recent film we've talked about, and one of the most
it's the same year as Joe's Apartment.
Ones. Okay, yeah,
because 96, right?
96, yep.
But absolutely, probably the biggest movie we're talking about on the podcast.
Yes. Yeah, you say that and people are still like, oh yeah, that movie, I like that. So it is a commercially successful film that is still, it is not lost to the annals of time at all.
No, not at all. But it's something that I've seen it once since I've lived in Los Angeles, and I did forget that it included a significant part by Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Which
I didn't know Dan Aykroyd was in this picture.
I forgot Dan Aykroyd was in this movie. So yeah, Space Jam's fun. I'll be excited to rewatch Space Jam. It's also, you know, part of that last iteration, that last big push of like theatrical cell animation.
Yeah.
And probably the last. Oh no, there was that Joe Dante Looney Tunes movie with Brendan Fraser.
Exactly, Looney Tunes back in action.
Yeah, never saw that one.
I saw that in the theater.
Was that any good?
No, not very good at all. But I thought, I was like, oh, this is as close to a Space Jam sequel as you can get. And then, yeah.
So yeah, I've always wanted to watch it because Joe Dante, Brendan Fraser, Looney Tunes, like on paper, that sounds great, but meh, bummer. It looks like Space Jam is currently streaming on HBO Max and Freeform.
Yes.
And also rentable on like Amazon, Apple TV, Vudu, Redbox, blah, 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 blah. So Space Jam available on an internet near you.
Yes. So that is what we'll be covering next week, and that's some announcements for the weeks and months to come. So in the meantime, Alex, where can people find more of your work?
You can check out angry reblogs and pictures of my cats, Twitter and Instagram at Alex Brunel.
Awesome. And you can find the show at Who Watches Pod on Twitter. We're at Who Watches Podcast on Instagram. We also stream every week on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. And you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, Stitcher, all the places you get your podcast from. And please subscribe, leave reviews, leave us feedback.
Smash
We
that like
appreciate
button
all-
on YouTube. That helps, I've
Oh
heard.
yeah, do that.
Cool.
I hear that it helps no matter what you do.
Yeah, smash the like button.
Yeah, if you like it or if you don't like it, it'll still generate views because it's people talking.
Smash the
I've
button.
heard about YouTube videos that like get disliked, and the person is like, I hope nobody else sees this, but the more it get disliked, the more it was like passed around.
Oh, funny.
So,
All right. If you
Yeah.
hate us, smash a button.
yeah, do it.
All right.
And in the meantime, stay safe, stay sane, and stay smiling.
See ya.